And do that first.
Okay.
Welcome. I'm Linda Guild. I am the CEO and founder of the Talented Alliance of Part-Time Professionals. And I am here with Joan. I'm going to let her pronounce her last name because I realized I didn't ask that in advance. She is the executive director of the Malden Chamber of Commerce. And I'm so excited to have a conversation with you to learn a little bit more about your role at the Chamber of Commerce and working. I know that you've worked part-time and how that's worked, and some tidbits that, people that are wanting to work part-time and are experienced and know that they have a lot to give, what they can learn from your experience. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself and give some of the highlights of what you'd like to share with everyone. And welcome, and thank you for coming.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Anything to help our members. And also, my name is Joan Ford Mongeau, and I am the executive director of the Malden Chamber of Commerce. Mongeau is not an easy name to pronounce, so I appreciate your handing the mic to me for that one. And we will blame my husband and his family for that last name. My
Awesome.
birth name is Ford, so very simple. So I am currently the executive director of the Malden Chamber of Commerce. I had been the executive director of the Melrose Chamber of Commerce, which is a neighboring city to Malden. Both of these jobs are considered part-time, but I consider them more flexible time.
Okay.
Because it is a salaried position. And yet when I was in Melrose, I had two of my children in high school who were very actively involved in different activities, and I wanted to be a part of that. So the flexibility that the chamber offered me gave me the opportunity to do what I wanted to do with my children. To backtrack a little bit, when I went to college, I have a Bachelor of Arts from Mount Holyoke College, which is a women's college in the western part of the state.
And a very good women's college, by the way, for those that aren't familiar with it, look it up.
And I am still actively involved in the Alumni Association there and with my class activities as well. So that gave me a true foundation, I think, in terms of the strength and the power that women bring to the world and the workforce. And so I started my career. I had always envisioned myself having a corner office someday. And I started my career full-time with an insurance company in Boston. And I worked part-time to get my master's, my MBA at Boston College. So to me, it was the best of both worlds. I had the beautiful liberal arts education and then the more technical education that the MBA offered me. So I continued on this track. I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was a manager, and then boom, I got pregnant with twins. Remarkable. And a true joy, a true gift. Shifted my priorities a little bit, quite a bit. And I went back to work part-time after having my first set of twins. First is the operative word here. I then had a second set of twins. So I am the mother of 4. And but yet still kept that vision of the corner office always in my brain, and knew that I had something to offer. So while raising 4 kids, and this was a purely economic decision, I left the workforce. Because it was going to cost more to have full-time care for 4 kids under 4 than it was for me to go back to work. So that being said, I started carving out my career the way I felt I could. And what that meant was I started doing some project work for people I had become acquainted with, either at Cooper's, at New England Life, which was the insurance company I worked at, John Hancock, where my husband worked, and then another smaller business where I knew the owner very, very well. So project-based work. that kept me in the world. It gave me the opportunity to put my kids to bed at night, and that was my fun at night, was solving a problem that one of these businesses had. So that's how I started building the part-time career.
Oh, that's awesome. And during that time period, were you normally just, it sounds like you were probably working more from home, or did you sometimes go into one of these offices?
Sometimes I went in, and that at that point it was getting easier to get a babysitter, because as the kids got older, it was easier to get a babysitter. And I also have a lot of extended family who were very, very supportive of my working, and my dream of being able to make meaningful part-time work for me. And so that worked out really well. Sometimes it was, it wasn't without its hiccups or its bumps, believe me, but I kept going, and I think I know I was happier because of it, because I was able to make a contribution and continue to keep myself interested, engaged, and involved.
And I'm sure that for those companies, you were providing such a great service that they didn't have somewhere else. I feel like a lot of times part-time can fill a gap in a company that they may not even realize that they need. And it's that outside perspective too, right?
Well, that is very true, because I found in a number of cases, I was working on a project that would have completely burdened one of the full-time staff. And so I came in for a very brief period of time. Sometimes it was a month, sometimes it was 6 months. And but and one of the things I loved about it is there was a sense of completion, because I was able to go in, there was an idea that the management had, and I was able to start it and finish it and deliver it. So that was very satisfying to me at the time. And it also kept my skill set sharp.
Yeah.
And I was able to keep up with technology, keep up with my business reading. And because of these opportunities.
And when you were doing that, how did you kind of structure your time around it? So do you remember it, it sounds like you had your own, you could structure some of your time. So how did, do you have any tips of what you did that seemed to work for you? I mean, with 4 little kids, that's a lot to be maneuvering around as well. So
I agree. For me, it was a matter of consistency for me. Like, I knew lunchtime was not a good time for me to be working, because I had 4 people to feed. But I knew that they also went to bed early at 7 o'clock. So I knew that I could work then. And I was anxious for a change at 7 o'clock at night too. So, and I did, my husband was super supportive of the whole idea, and, he would take over whenever he could. And we made it work. But I think for me, consistency in terms of a schedule was super important, and not putting myself in a situation where I'd feel frustrated because I would have 4 kids crying and I couldn't answer the telephone, So I just knew that I had to structure it as best I could.
That's awesome. And then at some point you've transitioned into working for, you said, with the Melrose Chamber. Did you continue the project work until you did that, or did you?
I did continue project work until I did that. Once again, it was a dear friend who owned a company. And at this point, my children were older. However, my parents were starting to need some help too. So I did work for a very good friend of mine who owned his own company, and I tested software for him. And I could do that on my own schedule at my convenience, as long as I met the agreed upon deadlines. So that worked out really well. The other thing that I did, and I really encourage people who like part-time work to do this, I volunteered a lot. I volunteered and I took leadership positions within my hometown, which is Melrose.
Okay.
And that to me, so I was president of different organizations. I was the chairperson of different organizations, treasurer, secretary. So that also kept me engaged and involved. And once again, kept my skills sharp. So I built a resume based on the part-time work and the community engagement. So then that led me to the Melrose Chamber of Commerce. So that particular resume got me my first executive director position. So it's not the corner office, but
the corner office is not the same type of corner office that you were thinking.
Well, agreed, you know, and that's okay. It currently is the home office. So, but I think that it still gave me a lot of responsibility, and in terms of, I feel incredibly responsible for my members and my members' success. So that is how I have built a part-time position, and for me, it's worked out incredibly well, and it's made me very, very happy.
So for the Melrose Chamber of Commerce as well as Malden, were they always part-time positions?
Well, people would argue that, you know, the positions in actually,
and you said flexible versus part-time, but
right, exactly. But in theory, my job is a 30-hour-a-week job.
So technically part-time.
So technically part-time. Yep. But as I tell everybody, there are weeks I will work 50 hours and weeks I will work 20 hours. And to me, at the end of the day, as long as the work gets done, it seems to be, it works for me, and I think it works for them. And the same thing was true in Melrose. That, like I said, I had kids who were in high school, and it's hard to believe, but anybody who's got children would realize that high schoolers need a little bit more attention than toddlers do, because they're doing things like driving, and they want your car, and you know, all that kind of crazy business. So I would truly, you know, I would be as flexible as I could. And once again, it goes back to the planning. It goes back to me being as consistent as I could be with my schedule, and making sure that it met my needs, the needs of the job.
And for, you know, being in the executive director of chambers, I sometimes joke about what I know. I know enough to be dangerous, which means there's so much I don't know. How much have you been able to set some of the schedule? And I'm pretty sure in fact, I know with Malden, you have a board of directors, because I know who your president is. How much are you able to say, like, block time off and say, no, that's sacrosanct for me. You know, we can't have an event, you know, like you had a multi-chamber event last night that I know you were at. But if you did that in the week of the 18th in Massachusetts, that school vacation week, and if you still had kids in high school, you might say, I'm going away. Like, how much do you have control over that type of things? And again, the consistency, like, I'd love you to speak a little bit more of how you communicate some of that to the people around you to be able to hold that time.
Well, yeah, that's a really, really good question. So I'm going to give, maybe sounds like a convoluted answer. Number one, it's my job, you know, and I accept the fact that I live in Gloucester now.
Okay.
And this is my home office, because we are a virtual organization, which to me is an incredible gift, that I can be virtual. Yet so Saturday, I was in Malden because there was a grand reopening of Dom's Sausages. So I went to Malden on Saturday. Friday afternoon, we have our new member Zooms, which I'd love to see you participate in, at 4:00. To me, that would typically be the end of a work week, but this works for the members, so it works for me. Now, so last night, it's my job. I enjoy it. This is the part of it I love. But if someone said this Friday, which happens to be for me a religious holiday, people would say, oh, I'd like to schedule a meeting at noontime on Friday. I would say, I'm not available.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, once again, it's setting the boundaries. And I am as flexible, I'm very flexible. So, and once again, it comes down to, I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
And I loved going to a grand reopening Saturday at noon, you know, because it was important. It was important for me to congratulate that member on all the hard work that they had done during the pandemic and to reopen a brand new facility. So that was really important. To go to Lexington last night was really important, to see the members, and to, more importantly for me too, not more importantly, but equally as important, is to work with my peers in the other chambers, because we all support one another and we're all part-time pretty much.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes. But that's once again the theory, you know. So there is flexibility in it. And when I was in Melrose, my predecessor said to me, because we had a big event to kick off the holidays in December,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a whole weekend long event. And I of course was in full panic mode, thinking, because I'm one of these, like, you know, Christmas shopping, cookies, you know, it's the whole, you know, it's like the North Pole at my house. And she said, listen, after home for the holidays, you take the rest of the month off. So, you know, it wasn't necessarily true, but it was kind of a blessing from her to say, hey, you work flexible
Mm-hmm.
hours the rest of December, because you've just worked like a whole, you know, week's worth of work in 2 days. So I think that those are the kinds of things you just have to trade off. You have to be flexible. You also have to be consistent. I think that those are two of the key things that I've learned during my lengthy life. So
I think consistency is such an important piece, because it probably keeps you kind of in a pattern, right? Like, especially when the kids are
absolutely.
small, it's easy to say, I'll do it tomorrow. And
Yep.
then suddenly you're up against a deadline that you can't meet because you didn't, tomorrow came basically. Although tomorrow never comes, it does when there's deadlines.
I know. I know.
um, when you think about like someone that's new, whether it's a chamber role, and chambers I think are a unique beast, because you're working with members, you're working with communities, and you're working with volunteers. And I think you said something earlier that I'm sure helped you in the transition to it. And you said that you were very involved as a volunteer in community groups. So you probably understood some of the dynamics more than had you gone straight from project work, no volunteering, into the role of the executive director. But I'm making an assumption there. So I want to,
No, you are
this is part of my
100%. You are
question.
100% correct. 100%.
So as you're looking at, like, what advice did you give to your successor at the Melrose Chamber? Did you give them any piece of advice?
I gave her, I told her to have fun. I told her to enjoy it. I said, it is the best of all the worlds. And it truly is, the way that chambers are structured, particularly those that I'm involved with.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is the best of both worlds, because you can, excuse me, you do have the opportunity to see your members succeed. And to me, that's an incredibly rewarding experience. But I do advise any person who, and this could be, you know, it's typically female in this world, but it could be male too. Build your resume based on your skills and based on volunteer work. And I'm sure you will find places out there. Right now, I'm a volunteer at a museum up here in Gloucester.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I always wanted to work in a museum. You know, the corner office of a museum, like I was going to be, you know, the CEO of the Museum of Fine Arts. But I always wanted to be involved with the arts. So now, you know, kind of as my career is, you know, kind of winding down. But now I can finally be involved on a volunteer basis with a museum.
And
So,
what's your favorite part about being in the chamber?
oh, it's definitely the members. Without a doubt, it's the members. Like, I love having this conversation with you right now. This is great. It's getting to know people. It's getting to stay with them through their low times. And believe me, we've just had incredible low times. And through their high times, it's great to see them succeed. It's sad to see them not succeed. And it truly is, it's a chamber of community. And that's, that was the perfect transition for me from community-based volunteerism to chamber work, because it is yet another way to define community.
That's awesome. So when you decided that you were going to change change companies, did you have challenges in looking for a different role?
No. No. It's I did try something in between. I wanted to try something in between, and it was moderately successful. It was part-time, but it was part-time with hour restrictions,
Okay.
which I found to be difficult for me to work with. When I say hours, I could not go above a certain number of hours.
Okay.
Now, even if I worked and didn't charge for my work, which doesn't seem fair, anyway, it just was not. It was an organization that just couldn't wrap its head around part-time professionals.
I think it's a hard one, because if
we have to be careful where we use that particular quote too.
No, but I mean, I think it's understanding where there, what do we need to still educate and help people to be successful, right? So if it's a company's first foray into hiring part-time and there's not the clarity around what that means,
yes,
it's really hard. So one of the questions we've worked with, we recently worked with a company, and they said it's going to be X hours a week. And my question back to them was, well, where did you get that number?
Yep.
Because if it's too low or too high, it doesn't benefit either side. And, I've often said in what we do, because we've done stuff that is contract based as a company on the other side of our business, we have the Talented Alliance of Part-Time Professionals. And then I also have an association management company. If I have staff that does work that's not part of our contract, no one's compensated for it and it's not valued. And that's the downside of doing it, doing the extra hours, is you're not valued for the additional benefit you're bringing to the organization, and not out of maliciousness. It's just, it's one of those catch-22s. It does become a little bit more complicated. And so it's interesting hearing how you're defining with the chambers. And I think it's your mindset around it is really awesome, because it's probably helped you from getting frustrated with the process too. Hey, I worked 50 hours this week. That's not fair. I'm part-time, or, hey, I actually don't have a part-time job. I have a flexible job, which means in the entirety, it's on the lower end of the spectrum. But to make myself successful, I can put in those extra hours and still feel good about it, is what I'm hearing.
That you are 100% correct. And I think that it's sort of at the end of the day, it's like, did you eat your vegetables today? No, I didn't eat vegetables today, but I had 2 servings yesterday. So at the end of the week, you got all your vegetables. It just might not be, in the portion that everyone tells you it should be. So I think the same thing is true with the hours that I'm working right now. I am incredibly lucky. I'm grateful. And I do think that the flexibility afforded to me by the board, and the trust. I think trust is another factor with part-time professionals as well. They just trust that I will get the work done.
Yep.
And, if you emailed me on a Sunday, Linda, I probably would answer you on a Sunday. So just, I just might be looking at my phone and say, oh, Linda's got a quick question. I can just answer it. And then it's fresh in my mind. I know I've done it. I know I've taken care of what you needed. So, but I don't always do that. Sometimes Sundays I say, hey, it's Sunday. I'm not going to plug in, but sometimes I do. So,
and then as long as there's an understanding that it's okay both ways, right?
And yes, correct.
So that if on Sundays that is your family time, and you're not going to respond to emails, that's okay too. I am. Unless you have an event at 7:30 Monday morning,
correct,
where you might
correct.
need to be looking to see, make sure a venue hasn't closed overnight or something weird with it. But
absolutely correct. And before an event, I probably would work Saturday and Sunday, if I had an event on Monday. So, but then I'd probably take Wednesday and Thursday off, or something like that. But it all, or I call it chamber light.
Okay.
So I would have chamber light. I'd answer my emails, and that's about all I'd do. And just, unless I had something else that I was rolling right into, and it's flexible. It depends on the priorities. So, and it all works out for me.
Awesome. Well, do you have any other pieces of advice that have popped into your head while we've been talking that we could share?
No, but I'm really excited to be able to talk about this, because I haven't reflected on it in a long time. And just thinking about the project work back when the kids were small, and, and how did we manage that? And it was important. I think one of the things is it was important enough to me, and it was important enough to my family. And it worked. It completely worked. So.
And I think, I grew up with a mom that worked from the time I was 6 on in a community. I grew up in the neighboring town of Winchester. So
yep.
There weren't as many working parents. And I think it made her a great mom because it helped. That was part of who she was. And I think when people are able to keep working on their terms, we as a society don't lose that brain trust. There's so much knowledge, there's so much perspective with individuals, whether it's men or women, that when they leave the workforce for whatever reason, because it seems like it's all or nothing, we lose that base. And I think that's that's why I'm passionate about it.
Oh, I'm completely passionate about it. Whenever I heard what you did, I was like, oh, that is such a brilliant idea. It's so brilliant. I used to have this idea, this goes way back, that I would make a business that was like a temp agency for part-time professional women. So if we had a client who needed a part-time controller, we could take one of these women and she could serve in that role for 6 months, like an interim kind of thing. So I never got it off the ground. It was a great idea, but
you never know. When you leave the chamber, you might decide that that's the route you're going to go.
we can't say I'm leaving the chamber. I think,
I think you will. I mean, we don't know if it's going to be in a year or 20 years, but at some point in time, you will leave the chamber.
In 20 years, I'll be looking for the home. But yeah, seriously, so I'm super fortunate, and I appreciate your interviewing me. This is pretty nice.
This is awesome. So thank you so much for being here. We've enjoyed hearing your story, and I love seeing that there's so many ways that people can work part-time and do it on their terms, because everyone has a different reason for working part-time.
Yes.
And what they enjoy. And thank you for being a part of it. And with that, we'll end the interview. Tanya,